You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 119. Stay tuned. Welcome to Beyond the High Road, a podcast dedicated to healing your heart and life following the grief of alienation. I'm your host, Shelby Milford, a twice certified life coach specializing in post-traumatic growth. If you're experiencing the effects of alienation and you're ready to heal, then this show is my love letter to you. Stay tuned. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? That's the extent of the singing that you'll ever get from me because it's not pretty. I'm sure I've told you before. I have a video somewhere of me doing this singing exercise after I took voice lessons back in like 2020 when we were all bored. And it is a treat, let me tell you. It's so funny. I did it. Yeah. Anyway, I'll have to find it. It's somewhere. I think it's on my Facebook, like on my personal one or Instagram. Yeah, it's on my Instagram, my personal one, which by the way, I have not, I know some people still like go on and follow me there. I have not opened up or looked at that Instagram. So if you've ever sent me a message to like the Shelby Milford, like my not business one, and I haven't responded to you, that's why. I haven't opened it up in years. Anyway, I don't know where all that came from. That all came from me doing a little ditty in the beginning. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about contradictions in alienation. Not so much other people's contradictions and the perpetrators' contradictions, but our own contradictions in the way that we're thinking during that whole healing the trauma and the grief process, if you will. Okay. And the power of and that's actually not meaning to be redundant. How this came up, just as it always does, it's like the universe just plops down little hints. I didn't know up until yesterday what I was going to be doing, like what the topic was going to be. And then it always, through the power of a thought download, it was very evident what it was going to be because there have been some themes going on, some recurring themes in my own healing over the last few months, really, but they're all kind of coming to a head right now. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. So how it started, though, was a couple of weeks ago, I started rewatching that series that was on Apple TV originally. Now it's on Amazon Prime, Big Little Lies. When it came out, it was right at the end of that really ugly period of time, very dark period of time for me. And though the show itself, like the content, like the storyline, was pretty dark, it was also such a dreamy set, and it just reminded me of a really awkward time back then. So there's that. I don't know if I mentioned that another fellow alienated mom parent out there just went through this past week, this really big major surgery. And she pulled out of it. It was on Tuesday that she went in and she pulled out of it. But I sent her recommendations for some shows to binge. You know, while she's sitting in bed, she's got to be healing. She just got home back from the hospital yesterday, the day before. And so I had sent her, because I just started watching the first season again, Big Little Lies. And I was like, you should watch that. And then I wasn't thinking about the fact that it had been haunting me already over the last week or so of watching the first season. And then, of course, I go and recommend it to her. Like, what am I thinking? Second season has Meryl Streep in it, who makes me want to crawl out of my skin. I forgot how activating season 2 can be. And even season 1, if you guys haven't seen the show, it's about moms of young children, right? They're in like first and second grade. And there's some drama going on and somebody gets killed. And one of the characters in it, Nicole Kidman's character in it, was an ex-attorney, but stopped working at the request, more demand of her narcissist husband, physically abusive, controlling man. They had a really tumultuous, weird relationship. There's so many similarities between him and my last ex that it's ridiculous. Both guys, actually. And I was sitting there watching it over the last, I don't know how it's been, like a week, 2 weeks, I don't know, wondering to myself, did I ever, when I was watching it back then, because I was just leaving him, was I seeing the parallels? Or was I still so in it, foggy, coming out of it, that I was in the same kind of denial that Nicole Kidman was in the show? And so in comes the second season. And of course, it's so crazy how we forget like the major details. This is reminding me of back when I remember showing my daughter and I, we would do classic movie days. Then when she got old enough to care about non-cartoon sort of shows, we would watch Goonies, we did Annie, and one of them was E.T. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be such a great one to do. Completely forgetting that E.T. turns white, sickly, blah, in the gutter or whatever he was, like in the woods. He looked awful, right? And it like traumatized my daughter. She was like, why did you make me watch this? Anyway, I started watching season 2 of Big Little Lies, and it finally dawned on me, walking my dog every night, I've been having these violent thoughts about my ex, my daughter's father, which I haven't had those in I don't know how long. I can't believe I'm actually saying this on like out there to the world, but these like mean thoughts, like I wouldn't mind if he died. I wouldn't mind if something happened to him. But I wasn't really acknowledging those thoughts. They were just there, sort of like nagging at me. And I wasn't putting it all together that I was just watching this, immersing myself in the show that was talking about this very thing. So obviously it was bringing up some old trauma for me, right? And so then, of course, I'm having these thoughts. I wasn't really recognizing them. And season 2 is with Meryl Streep. And it gets really bad because it's really some blatant attempts to alienate. I'm not going to spoil all of it for you, but she is really going for the kids. Nicole Kidman's character, her kids in the show. It's been really, really hard to watch. I'm not sure why I haven't stopped watching it. I still was watching it last night after I realized all of this. Anyway, I noticed that I started thinking last night while I was on the walk about what I was going to be talking with you guys about today. And I wanted to talk about the thoughts I was having about my ex. The fact that I have this idea that, no, I wouldn't mind it if he died. I really wouldn't. It just seems so shocking to me that I had these thoughts about my ex, who, by the way, is also still my daughter's father. And my daughter loves him, right? So I was shaming myself for having like the duality, having this huge contradiction where part of me wouldn't mind that it's something really terrible happened to him. And then there was this other part of me, the immense love for my daughter part of me that says, I would hate for that to happen because for my daughter's sake, the pain that she would go through and the loss that she would experience, even though they're taking acts to alienate and that's abusive, there's still an immense amount of loss that my daughter would have and feel and just experience. If this is you, if you have noticed that you have done a good amount of work and then all of a sudden something comes up and anger comes back again, it's okay. It does not mean that anything has gone wrong. And I know that you know this, but I think sometimes when we're really in it, we start to make it mean something. Like what kind of mom or what kind of person would wish such bad things on another person, no matter what they've done, still, why does it make me right to think those things? But also to remember that you're coming from a lot of pain and trauma. And it doesn't mean that you would ever have those terrible things done to the person. It's just the emotional brain trying to work out the pain that it feels has been inflicted on you. And so just because the thought occurs to you, and I know you've heard me say this before, that just because a thought occurs to you doesn't mean anything about you. It just means a thought has occurred. It's just a thought. Imagine it to be like something that you can hold in your hand, like a sentence that you can hold in your hand or like float by you. Just imagine the letters floating by you. It's not you. To be able to acknowledge it, like I remember I was saying that I wasn't even acknowledging that I was having these thoughts. They were there, but I was just allowing it to go on in the background in my mind without using my prefrontal cortex to say, hey, what are these thoughts about? You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't recognizing them. It's like when you see somebody in a room or like when your kid wouldn't go to bed at night and you know that they are up, but you're too busy doing something else. So you just don't acknowledge it. It's the same kind of thing. And then finally, when you're done doing what you're doing, then you realize and you go and you talk to your kids like, hey, you're supposed to be in bed right now. It's sort of the same thing with our thoughts. Acknowledging them is the first step, but also allowing for the contradiction to be there. It's totally normal. I've been having some not so nice thoughts about my ex appear in my mind, and I would actually not want those things to happen. Or maybe still you want those things to happen, but also you hold another truth, right? And I really want this to happen, but also I love my kid. I'm having these thoughts about him, but I also know that I'm not going to do anything about that. These are just thoughts. This is just the anger speaking or the hurt speaking. And that's okay. I didn't want to share with you guys. And at first, when I was thinking about doing the episode, I didn't want to share that I had these terrible thoughts because I thought, well, that's not who I'm supposed to be. I should be more healed. I'm the expert here, and I have been doing all the work. In fact, it's my job to be doing this work on the reg. So showing up, talking about the very things that all of y'all need help with, it at the time, the way my brain was presenting to me was the wrong thing to do. Like, I should not show that I am still having those problems, these challenges. And then afterwards, I was like, that's craziness. That's exactly why I should share it. And I want to share it. It's because these are the kind of things that I know that y'all are going through. And I want to be able to help you through it, knowing also what I know now about it. Right. So at the time, the shame me part of me that was telling me, no, don't share that to the world. You can't do that. You're supposed to be more healed. You're supposed to be above this. You're supposed to be further along than this. I had those kinds of should, shouldn't sort of thoughts go on. And then I thought, it doesn't have to be like that. And I know it, for me, it isn't like that. I'm confident in that. I know that I've done so much work on myself. Like I said, it's my job to do the work on myself, not only because I'm a responsible adult and I want to take care of my inner workings, right? But also I work with other people all the time and know these tools inside and out. And I share them with people and you guys know. But then I remembered this is an and situation. It's like I have these thoughts and I've done so much work on myself and it's not necessarily like trying to like make up for or use a positive to make the negative better. But it's like they're both things can be true. These thoughts have occurred to me, and also they mean nothing about me or anything that I might do, right? This thought occurred to me as a direct result of seeing this show, and it can happen with anything, talking to an old friend or hearing an old song, and then thoughts and feelings come up for us. Oftentimes, what's happening is the trauma that you weren't able to process up until like now, really, or especially back then when you were doing, for me, like back then when I was doing the active work to forgive my ex and his wife. Today, having this come up for me doesn't mean that I didn't do the work thoroughly enough. It just means there's some leftover stuff there. And I feel like our job as humans is really never done processing through trauma. All of us really, like even the people that you think have no trauma, they do. They have stuff. We all do, you know? And I think as we grow and we enter in relationships and get out of relationships, we're getting and re-traumatizing our own selves throughout all of it, you know? So it's really, our work is never going to be done in processing and learning and growing and what have you, right? So it makes sense that you could do work, heal, you could feel like, oh, now we're done with that. I will never get activated about that again. And you may be right, but just don't be surprised months, years down the road, whatever it is for you, if something happens to quote unquote trigger some thoughts or emotions for you. It makes sense because now that your body feels safe enough to handle it, it's going to give you access to some other areas that maybe you weren't able to access back when you initially processed. So it's really just a matter of recognizing the thoughts that are there and then understanding why they came up. For me, I know it was more situational, but then I had to go a little deeper and like, what am I angry about right now? So I guess my point of this is not to get into a whole nother topic here. It's okay. You can still have really unhelpful thoughts come up today, and it doesn't mean that you haven't grown. You have. You have. It's inevitable. This is just the process. This is just the way of it. Okay. So just don't make it mean anything about you when you have the contradictions in your healing and the way that you're feeling about those who have hurt you. Right. Like I was talking about with my ex and whatever. Contradictions can also happen with our kids and the way that we're thinking about them. We can miss them and we can also be angry at them. And that's okay. I know this, you guys, but when we're in that emotional part of the brain, we don't give ourselves the permission the way that we give other people. We allow for that. We understand it better. When we're in our own shit, especially when you have an overactive or dysregulated trauma response system, we tend to forget. So it's entirely possible to miss your kid and also be creating a beautiful life for yourself. This is one I know so many of you guys don't allow yourself this luxury, if you will, this right, this basic human right to love your life even while you miss your kid. It doesn't mean, and I know I spoke about this recently somewhere, you can have both. You can feel very sad and want things to go back to how they were. I mean, I suggest you do the work on that at some point, but it's okay to wish that this didn't happen, alienation didn't happen, and also be building a beautiful life for yourself. It's okay to not feel grateful for what has been done to you and your kiddos, and also be working to rebuild your life. You don't have to be one or the other. See, and this is where I think so many of us get tripped up too, because if you have been with somebody that was the kind of abusive or the kind of narcissist that wanted to pigeonhole you, and you like, no, you said you were this, and that's the story you need to stick to. This is who you are, blah, blah, blah. You're the problem. You know how they are, right? We feel like that we need to carry that persona on and reveal that to whoever we meet next and all the things, as if that has to be your only identifying qualities moving forward. But it's not true. The contradictions are reality. That's what makes us human, right? To have one and also have the other in the very same moment many times. Like I can be missing my kid like crazy, being angry for what my ex has done, but I can also be very excited about building the life that I'm building right now. That can all go hand in hand. I'm not there yet, but I know people that are so excited and in love with a partner, right? The life that I'm building here, and still so angry about being here to begin with, right? Like, why aren't I back with my kid? I would take anything over that. But also at the same time, be madly in love with whoever I'm building a life with. They don't need to be separate. You can have both. And there's nothing wrong with you, and you are not less loyal to the kid or to your partner or anybody, or your kids that are living with you currently, whether they're your stepchildren or your kids after the last. So many parents I know feel the weight of giving love to the kids that are in front of you, like they're being disloyal to their children who are alienated, you know? But your kids deserve that love. And so for you to constantly be guilting yourself about giving them love because your alienated kids also need your love, yet you can't reach them. Allow for both things to be true. You can be missing these kids, be wishing that you could also love them, but also be giving all of your time to your current kids. You know, it's the problem is when we fight it, when we start resisting either one of your realities, your truths, that's when you start to notice that you're not present. All that conflict inside is causing you to go inward, like you're having an internal war. And so then you start to judge yourself, and you're making it mean something, that you're a bad mom for not attending to your alienated kids, even though you can't. And there's like actually not a possibility for you to access, but we'll blame ourselves for it because we're good at that, you know? So just like make room for all of it. Allow for all the contradictions, all the incongruity, inconsistency, that's going on. It's okay. In fact, it's so normal for that to be. That gives you the texture and vibrancy, the beautiful person that you are, all the layers of you. Another contradiction is when we'll say, I was kind of hinting at this earlier, I was doing so well and everything went downhill. Instead of saying I was doing so well, but then whatever, add an and. I am doing so well and I had a cry session today. I am doing so well. I've been doing so well. And I'm angry today too. See how that changes everything? I'm doing so well. I've been doing all the things. I've been present and I've been feeling in charge of my life. And I also have been going through a resurgence of anger about my ex. And you can include that with it. In fact, I think that that really complements I'm doing so well because you're being real about what's going on. Doing so well doesn't have to mean that you don't have emotions or that you don't have leftover trauma that is unprocessed at this point. Doing so well just means that you know that you're on the path, but anything that comes up for you doesn't set you back. There are no setbacks. There are no setbacks. Please remember that. That should be the title of this. There are no setbacks to any of your healing. It's just all ands also. Two, this also came up. I was watching these videos. I record client sessions for them. Nobody else sees them except for me and them, unless I get permission from them. So I was just watching sessions from clients who have just recently graduated the program. One of them in particular he was like, you know who you are. He has been just such a pleasure to work with because he's really wanted to apply and incorporate these tools in his everyday life. He's been very inquisitive, also challenging in conversations because he allows his objections to come up with in our conversations so that no stone is left unturned. And he doesn't just agree with me because he thinks that that's the right thing to do. He's really made so much progress from the time that he started back last May, beginning of last May. He finished up back in December, not only in his growth and his relationships, right? The way that he thinks about and sees his relationship with his sons and also his ex. He's also progressed in the case so much. Like when we first started, I think he was seeing his kiddo for half hour at a time every other weekend. I forget that all the progressions, but back when we stopped in December, he had his kiddo for like full weekends, which is so good. He had been at a standstill basically for 2 years almost 2 years prior to May. And I'm not taking the credit for that. It's just that we got him to step into his power and take back his time. So it was amazing. He really had done the work on himself and willing to do the work on himself and apply it to his relationship with this kid and what have you. And I don't always suggest this to every client, but he is ready and had already started to do the work on forgiveness, right? On forgiving and loving what is. And so we had a conversation about how resistance always feels worse and is taxing, and there's a degree of suffering depending on how much you're resisting. But when you decide to accept, like radically accept and love what is, then obviously things flow in all areas of your life. Wherever you can always tell when somebody is in the resistance and in fighting something and wanting things to go back to how they were or wanting things to get better up there and not present in today by the results that they have currently in their lives. If they're like, I just can't get past, I can't do this, frustrated all the time, then they're obviously resistant about something. And so obviously there's so many benefits to allowing what is to be so that it can release the toxicity, right, and power so that you can then get to work on fixing it if that's what you want to do. Fixing it isn't the wrong word, but you know what I'm saying. And so he asked me, so is that what you do in all areas of your life? And I was like, yes, for the most part, I do. But there was one area that I brought up. Clearly, I was still feeling some resistance. I had done some radical work to forgive and also to love what is and love even my ex and stepmom years ago. And I did it to the point where I prayed for her, and not just, I prayed that she figures her shit out and blah, blah, blah. I prayed for her like in the most compassionate and sisterly way. I prayed and felt connected, worked to feel connected to her in love rather than in resentment and hate. And I tell you, this was such difficult work to do. But when you're able to, and it came in windows back then, and then those windows became more and more. And then at some point, the windows were bigger than the off times were, where I could actually feel myself sending loving energy her way. And it released so much friction and tension and weight off my shoulders to allow her to be and wish love for her to receive and give love, and for her to grow in all the ways for her own good, not for me. Which, y'all, as you know, doing this for somebody that has been abusive, to you and your child is some fucking hard work, right? It's really hard. But as I say that, I also know what's even harder is not doing the work. It's allowing them to eat you up on the inside because of the way that you're thinking about it. So it is harder to be in resistance anyway. So that's a contradiction in itself. When I was talking about it with him, I noticed the resistance in me because since then, doing all that work back then, really giving myself to it. And then years later to be sitting right here, actually, while I was talking to him, noticing the other day while I was watching it, the resistance and the anger that had come up for me since then. And so I, again, did do all that work back then. But of course, if I let that go, or even if I didn't, if I was still practicing it and other stuff comes up, I mean, just going through life, you're going to have other things come up and you just get out of that thought habit of thinking lovely thoughts for them. It's going to recur, is what I'm saying. Just as like I was saying earlier, you can have done all the work to heal yourself and still have ugly thoughts come up later. You can still have resistance and anger come back up for that, about them. And it's okay. It is all okay. It's an and. I did all this work and I prayed and I felt connected to her in a sisterly way, in a bigger than me kind of love way for her, even though she was also my abuser. And today I have angry thoughts about her, feel resistance towards her. So I also know that it's my time to go back and start doing that radical work that I once did with her, revisit that stuff again with her. And that is okay. So I just want you to give yourself the permission to not make it mean anything about you when shit comes up. It just means that you're human. Talking about pigeonholing, if you went to court for this whole situation, you know that the opposing attorney also wants to pigeonhole you and label you as this irresponsible, unloving, not present person. But this is where I think it's so important for you to understand that those words, and I know that you do with your prefrontal, but what they were doing was exactly what I'm asking you to put the and on. I have been not present. I made mistakes in my past. Whatever it is, get specific. Maybe you had one drink too many and drove with your kids in the car. That doesn't make you a child abuser or you the kind of person that always drives with children in your car drunk. That was something that you did back then, and now blah, blah, blah. You can be selfish, we all are, and you can also be the most giving, loving, caring, whatever, right? Again, I just want to raise this conversation because most of us, when we're doing our everyday, all the time thinking, we're so mean to our own selves in the way that we speak, right? That we talk to ourselves like, you shouldn't do that. You should have known. You should have done better. Why do you always get so angry about this? Why can't you do better, be better, get over this? You should be over this by now. We say terrible things to ourselves. So now you just become aware of it. Just be kind to yourself and know that in the beginning, when you're trying to make the things that you've done or the words that you think mean something about you, just the simple thing to remember is where I think that there's a period here, there's an and there's another sentence fragment that goes with it. You don't have to make the negative a positive, but you also don't need to make the negative statement or the negative thought the end all be all. So that's all I have for you. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Y'all just remember too, Facebook group, I do it every Friday. I keep forgetting to announce it. So Facebook group is the private Facebook group. I'm live every Friday I'm doing it at 12:15 now. So 12:15 on Fridays in the private Facebook group. I'll put a link for the group if you haven't already joined down below. Okay. So that's what I got for you. Y'all have a lovely day. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you like what you're hearing and you'd like to hear more, please make sure to click subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Also, for bite-sized clips and tips, be sure to find me on TikTok or Instagram. See you next week.